My question to David is, among those who are watching this, they must be very excited, but very worried. There's so much going right here. What can go wrong over the next few years? And David, of course, has laid out some things that can go wrong. He's been to Florida. He's watched what's happened there. So what would keep Libby Doggett up at night, or should keep her up at night?
And the nightmare is that politicians, all those folks that Libby and Sue were talking about, are naturally in the credit claiming business. They really want to do well by doing good. And it's much easier to say umpteen thousand more kids are in preschool than to say the kids in pre-kindergarten are getting a great education. It's much easier politically to go from a good pre-K program to a bigger pre-K program than it is to go from a big pre-K program to a good pre-K program. And the shining example is Florida, which I spent a fair amount of time in. And in Florida, you get a bewildering variety in terms of quality, and there's nobody regulating what that quality is. If you can breathe, stand up on your hind legs and breathe, and you've got a high school degree and a relatively modest amount of post-high school instruction, you can open up a school. You can limit the school on the basis of religion if you want to, both in terms of the students are, in terms of who you bring in. You can use a curriculum that's very heavily religious-based, and that has absolutely nothing to do with any theory of child development that I've ever heard. You can run a kind of strict, by the books, kids be quiet, learn how to line up kind of place. And the nightmare is that, and a lot of that happens because Florida spends so little money per kid, and so the teachers that you're getting, who I'm sure care about those kids a lot, don't understand what child development is about. So here's the nightmare. All those figures about investment paying off, crime, less crime, more income, etc., all that depends on there being a good program in place. If there isn't, if you've got 35 kids in the class of 4-year-olds in a pre-K class, there's no reason to expect that much is going to happen, except that the kids are in a kind of Lord of the Flies, situation, and nobody wants to be piggy. So if you remember that story, you get. This is why there are some reports that talk about kids get out of some versions of child care programs and are for a while more aggressive, a phenomenon that fades away. The reason for that isn't that there's something about pre-K. The reason for that is that the experience that they're having in what's called child care is just horrific. So the nightmare is that that's what winds up happening, that we get pre-K on the cheap, and that 10 years down the road, when the studies are done, and it turns out that pre-K didn't make much of a difference, that social conservatives will say, see, we told you. This is another one of those fads. Didn't pay off. This is the nanny state going amok. And if they're really, the between the lines message is, it's those kids. We told you, those kids who can't make it. That's the nightmare.